You know what's funny about family? We spend our whole lives believing that blood means loyalty, that the people who share our DNA will naturally show up for us when it matters most. But here's the shocking truth nobody wants to admit. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the same ones who'll humiliate you without a second thought, who'll choose literally anything over celebrating your success, who'll treat your life's work like an inconvenience they can't be bothered with. I learned that lesson the hard way when I invited my family to the biggest moment of my professional life, a national award ceremony being broadcast live, and my sister literally sneered at me through a text message, calling it a stupid award, before announcing she'd rather go to some random concert instead. I couldn't believe what I was reading, but the truth hit me like ice water. This was who they'd always been. I'd just been too hopeful to see it clearly. My parents backed her up with casual indifference. My brother responded with a laughing emoji, and in that moment, something inside me cracked open. Not with sadness, but with this cold, calculated clarity. They'd lied to me my entire life through their actions, pretending that family meant something while treating my accomplishments like background noise that interrupted their real priorities. So I made a decision right there. I typed, "Okay," turned my phone face down, and decided not to tell them the details that would have forced them to take it seriously. The scale, the press, and where the broadcast would show up. I gave them the date and how to watch, but I didn't explain the cameras or the reach. What happened next? Let's just say that while they were screaming along to some forgettable band, completely oblivious and self-satisfied in their choice, Karma was preparing the most beautiful revenge I could have never orchestrated myself. Because sometimes the universe has a way of exposing people's true priorities in the most public, most undeniable way possible. And my family was about to learn that lesson in front of an audience of strangers who understood my worth better than they ever had. But before I tell you about the frantic phone calls, the desperate backpedaling, and the humiliated panic that exploded across my phone screen that night, you need to understand how we got here, how a lifetime of being the invisible daughter built up to this one moment of crystal clear justice. My family treated my achievements like background noise, something happening in the distance while they focused on what really mattered to them. I'd learned not to expect much, but when I got the email about the award ceremony, something shifted inside me. It was going to be broadcast live, the kind of recognition that felt too big to shrink. So I opened our family group chat, took a breath, and typed, "I'm receiving a national award next Saturday at 7 p.m. It'll be streamed live. I'd love for you all to be there, or at least watch." I hit send and waited, watching those 3 little dots appear and disappear like a cruel joke. Blair's message came first, and I could practically hear her laugh through the screen. "A stupid award? Seriously, Evelyn?" Then came the kicker. She was going to some concert that night, some indie band I'd never heard of, and apparently that was way more important than anything I could ever accomplish. Mom chimed in next with a casual, "We're busy that night, honey." And Dad just sent a thumbs up to Blair's message like he was co-signing her betrayal. My brother Corey didn't even bother responding. He just reacted with a laughing emoji to Blair's text. And that silence said everything I needed to know about where I stood in this family. I stared at my phone, feeling that familiar ache settle in my chest, the one that whispered I'd never be enough, that my worth would always be measured against Blair's charm or Corey's humor and come up short. But this time, something else crept in alongside the hurt, a quiet, calculated calm. I didn't type out the angry paragraph sitting on my tongue. I didn't explain that this wasn't some participation trophy or local newsletter mention, that this award was for life-saving work, for a system that shaved precious minutes off emergency response times. I just typed 2 letters. Okay. Then I turned my phone face down on the table and made a decision that would change everything. I wouldn't beg for their attention anymore, wouldn't try to convince them I mattered, wouldn't shrink my dignity to fit into their narrow idea of what deserved celebration. They'd made their choice crystal clear: Blair's concert, their comfort, their indifference, and for once, I was going to let them live with the consequences. I couldn't believe how free that single word felt leaving my fingertips, how much power there was in simply stopping. I gave them the date and how to watch, but I didn't explain the scale. I didn't tell them it would be broadcast beyond the stream, or that my face would end up on screens all over the city. Let them find out the hard way, I thought, already imagining the shocking moment when reality would slap them across their smug faces. Because while they'd be screaming along to some forgettable band in a crowded venue, completely oblivious, the truth about who I really was would be spreading like wildfire around them. That okay became my line in the sand, the moment I stopped performing for an audience that never planned to show up anyway. I didn't know it yet, but Saturday night wasn't just going to be about me receiving recognition. It was going to be about my family finally seeing me, whether they wanted to or not. And the karma brewing in that silence? It was going to be absolutely beautiful. But before I tell you what happened when those lights came on and my name echoed through that ballroom, before I show you the frantic messages and the desperate backpedaling, you need to understand how we got here. Saturday night arrived like a storm I'd been watching build on the horizon, and I felt strangely calm getting ready in my hotel room in Chicago. I could picture my family exactly where they were. Blair probably taking selfies in line outside the venue, Mom and Dad grabbing overpriced drinks, Corey cracking jokes to strangers, all of them blissfully unaware of what was about to unfold. They weren't busy. They were going to the concert with Blair. Calling it busy was just their polite way of saying I wasn't worth rearranging anything for. Meanwhile, I was sliding into a dress that cost more than I'd ever spent on myself, preparing to step onto a stage they decided wasn't worth their time. The ceremony started at 7 sharp, just like I'd told them, and I wondered if they'd even remembered for a second before the opening act started playing. Did Blair glance at her phone and think of me for even a moment before dismissing it? Did Mom feel a flicker of guilt between sips of her cocktail? I'd never know, and honestly, I was starting not to care. My phone was on Do Not Disturb from the moment I walked into the ballroom. What I did know, what filled me with this electric, almost dangerous sense of anticipation, was that the venue where my family stood, along with other locations across Chicago, had screens streaming the ceremony live. My name was called around 7:40, and I walked across that stage with every camera in the room tracking my movement, knowing that my face was simultaneously appearing on a 50-foot screen in the ballroom and on public displays throughout downtown Chicago. The announcer's voice boomed through speakers. Evelyn Paige, for revolutionary contributions to emergency response systems that have directly saved an estimated 200 lives. The number came from the 18-month dataset. Boston pilot first, then the 3-state rollout. I smiled, accepted the crystal trophy that caught the light like captured lightning, and felt the weight of genuine recognition. The kind that doesn't need to beg for validation or explain itself into existence. But here's the twist that still makes me smile when I think about it. The venue where Blair's precious concert was happening wasn't just a stage. It was an arena complex with concourse screens running the local news feed between sets. Between sets, those screens defaulted to the local news channel, and the broadcast cut to the awards right as my category was announced. When it did, my face hit every screen at once. So while my family stood there in that packed room, probably complaining about the wait or arguing about where to stand for the best view, my face suddenly appeared above their heads. Strangers in the crowd, people who actually paid attention to things beyond their own little bubble, started pointing, pulling out phones, connecting dots faster than my own blood relatives could process what they were seeing. I found out later that someone in the crowd literally tapped Dad on the shoulder and asked, "Hey, isn't that your daughter? That's so cool, man. What's she getting awarded for?" The confusion on his face must have been priceless. That moment when reality backstabbed his comfortable narrative about his unremarkable middle daughter who wasted her time on stupid awards. Blair apparently tried to play it off, laughing nervously and saying something about how I did computer stuff, but her voice got smaller with each person who turned to look at them. Each stranger who seemed more impressed by me than my own sister had ever been. What happened next would flood my phone with messages I hadn't asked for, apologies I didn't believe, and a sudden, desperate interest in my life that reeked of performance and vengeance against their own guilty consciences. But right there on that stage, holding that award under those lights, I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that for once, for the first time in my entire life, I'd been seen exactly as I was, and my family's opinion hadn't mattered one bit. Still, there was a reason I'd felt invisible for so long, a pattern that had been building since childhood. Growing up in my family felt like being cast in a play where everyone else had speaking roles, and I was just part of the scenery. Blair was the star from the moment she could walk. Pretty, charming, the kind of kid who could light up a room just by entering it, and our parents ate it up like starving people at a feast. Every piano recital, every school play, every mediocre report card became a celebration because it was Blair's, and Blair made everything feel special just by touching it. I learned early that my job wasn't to shine. It was to make sure the spotlight stayed firmly on her, to be the responsible one who remembered things and fixed problems while everyone else got to be interesting. Corey came along 4 years after me, and suddenly the family dynamic had its comedian, the funny one, the charming troublemaker who could diffuse any tension with a joke and get away with murder because he was just so damn entertaining. Mom would laugh at his pranks even when they destroyed my school projects. Dad would ruffle his hair affectionately after he borrowed $20 from my wallet without asking. Meanwhile, I became the ghost in our family photos, present but not really seen, there but not quite noticed. The daughter who was expected to handle adult responsibilities while being treated like her accomplishments were just obligations being met. When Blair won a local beauty pageant at 15, we had a party that lasted 3 days. Relatives flew in. Dad grilled enough food for an army. Mom cried actual tears of joy like her daughter had cured cancer. When I got accepted into a prestigious engineering program with a full scholarship 2 years later, Mom said, "That's nice, sweetie," while scrolling through Facebook, and Dad asked if I could pick up Corey from soccer practice on my way home from the acceptance ceremony. The message was clear. Blair's beauty mattered, Corey's charm mattered, but my brain? That was just expected. That was just Evelyn being Evelyn, doing what she was supposed to do, nothing special. I remember this one Christmas when I was 19. I'd built this intricate robotics project that had won a state competition, and I was so proud I could barely contain it. I brought it home to show everyone, explaining how it worked, how it could be used in disaster relief scenarios, how the judges had called it genuinely innovative. Blair was on her phone the entire time, occasionally sighing like I was boring her to death. Corey made a joke about me becoming a robot overlord, and everyone laughed. Dad glanced at it for maybe 10 seconds before asking Blair about some guy she was dating. I stood there holding this thing I'd poured my heart into, feeling absolutely humiliated, and that's when it really sank in. I could cure world hunger, and they'd still be more interested in Blair's new haircut. The pattern repeated itself over and over. My college graduation overshadowed by Corey's high school prom drama. My first job offer at a major tech company barely acknowledged, while Blair's engagement to some guy she'd known for 3 months became a months-long celebration. I learned to stop sharing, to keep my victories small and private, to expect nothing so I wouldn't be disappointed when nothing was exactly what I got. They'd cheated me out of the basic validation every child deserves, lied to me through their actions that I mattered as much as my siblings, and I'd spent so many years believing their version of my worth. But something changed when I started working with Dr. Ainen, Selma Rodriguez at the Emergency Response Innovation Lab. Suddenly, I was around people who saw potential instead of inconvenience, who got excited about ideas instead of dismissing them as nerdy stuff. For the first time in my life, someone looked at my work and said, "This is brilliant," without following it up with "but." That external validation started to crack open something inside me, a realization that maybe the problem wasn't that I wasn't enough. Maybe the problem was that I'd been trying to bloom in soil that was never meant to nourish me. And the work I was doing, it was about to become something my family couldn't ignore, even if they wanted to. Dr. Selma Rodriguez was the first person who looked at me and saw exactly what I was capable of. Not what I should be doing for others, not how I could make myself smaller to fit someone else's comfort, but the actual scope of what my mind could build. She ran the Emergency Response Technology Division at a research institute in Boston, and when I landed an internship there at 23, I felt like I'd finally found my people. These were folks who got excited about algorithms and data patterns, who understood that shaving 30 seconds off an ambulance response time could mean the difference between someone living or dying. This was work that mattered, work that saved actual lives, and nobody there treated it like background noise. I'd been obsessing over this problem for months. Emergency vehicles were losing critical time because dispatch systems couldn't accurately predict traffic patterns in real time, couldn't reroute fast enough when accidents blocked main arteries, couldn't communicate efficiently between multiple agencies responding to the same crisis. The current system was basically educated guessing with a decent database, but I knew we could do better. So I started building something new, something that integrated live traffic data, historical pattern analysis, weather conditions, and interagency communication into one seamless interface that could calculate the fastest route in under 3 seconds and update it continuously as conditions changed. Selma saw the early prototype, and I'll never forget the look on her face. Pure, unfiltered excitement, the kind my family had never once shown about anything I'd created. "Evelyn, do you understand what you've built here?" she said, pulling up simulations on her screen. "This isn't just clever coding. This is reclaiming time that saves lives. This is the difference between a stroke patient getting treatment in the golden hour or suffering permanent brain damage. This is justice for every person who's ever died because help arrived 4 minutes too late." Her words hit me like a physical force because someone finally got it. Someone finally understood that my work wasn't just about being smart or winning awards. It was about mattering in a tangible, undeniable way. We spent the next 8 months refining the system, running it through simulation after simulation, and then through a pilot program with the Boston Fire Department that produced results nobody could argue with. Response times dropped by an average of 18%. In emergency medicine, that's not just a statistic. That's dozens of lives saved, hundreds of complications prevented, families who got to keep their loved ones because an ambulance arrived in 6 minutes instead of 8. We piloted it with Boston, then expanded through a regional consortium across 3 states. The 18-month data set, the one cited on stage, came from that rollout. The data was so compelling that a federal agency reached out, interested in scaling the program nationally, and suddenly, I wasn't just some girl tinkering with code in a lab. I was someone whose work had genuine, measurable impact on human survival. Selma nominated me for the National Public Safety Innovation Award, and when the email came through with the official notification, I sat in my apartment reading it over and over, trying to process what it meant. This wasn't some participation trophy or departmental recognition that my family could minimize and dismiss. This was a ceremony at the Grand Marquis Hotel in Chicago, with federal officials attending, with live broadcast coverage, with my name and face being associated with work that had literally saved lives. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. The invisible daughter, the one whose accomplishments had always been treated like obligations, the one who'd learned to expect nothing. That's when I decided to tell my family, to give them one more chance to show up for me in a way that actually mattered. Maybe it was naive. Maybe it was a test I already knew they'd fail. But some small part of me still hoped that recognition this big, this undeniable, would finally break through their indifference. I crafted that message to the family group chat carefully, making it clear and simple, giving them the date and time, offering them both the option to attend in person or just watch the live stream from wherever they were. I told myself that this time would be different, that they'd finally see me, but deep down, I think I already knew the truth about what their response would reveal. The official email from the National Public Safety Foundation arrived on a Tuesday morning, and I must have read it 20 times before the reality sank in. "Dear Ms. Paige, it is our honor to inform you that you have been selected as this year's recipient of the National Public Safety Innovation Award, Innovator of the Year, for your groundbreaking contributions to emergency response technology." There were details about the ceremony, black tie event, keynote speakers from federal agencies, live broadcast, and a gala dinner where I'd be seated with people whose work I'd studied in college. This wasn't just recognition. This was validation on a scale my family couldn't possibly shrink down to fit their narrative of me as the unremarkable middle child. I sat there in my small apartment, still wearing yesterday's sweatpants, holding my phone like it contained proof of something I'd been trying to prove my entire life. This award represented everything I'd built, in spite of my family's indifference. The late nights coding while they celebrated Blair's latest boyfriend. The lonely achievements marked only by my own quiet satisfaction. The slow, steady accumulation of evidence that I mattered even when nobody was watching. And now people were going to watch. Thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands, would see my face on their screens, hear my name read aloud with words like revolutionary and life-saving attached to it. How could my family possibly dismiss this? How could they turn this into background noise? But even as I felt that surge of pride, that reclaiming of self-worth I'd been denied for so long, another feeling crept in, a test forming in my mind without me fully realizing it. I needed to know if my family could show up for something this significant, if recognition that came from outside their narrow world would finally matter to them, not because I needed their approval anymore. Selma and my colleagues had already shown me what genuine support looked like, but because I needed to know, once and for all, where I stood. This award was too big to ignore, too public to minimize, too important to treat like another one of Evelyn's nerdy things that nobody cared about. So I sent that message to the family group chat with my heart pounding, laying it out as simply and clearly as possible. I'm receiving a national award next Saturday at 7 p.m. It'll be streamed live. I'd love for you all to be there, or at least watch. I even included the hotel address, the streaming link, and a note that there would be a small reception afterward if anyone wanted to come. I told them it was national and live. That part was explicit. What I didn't do was beg them to care. I wasn't begging, wasn't overselling it, wasn't trying to convince them of its importance. I was just offering them a chance to be part of something meaningful in my life. A chance to see me not as the reliable, boring Evelyn who handled things quietly, but as someone who'd accomplished something genuinely extraordinary. Their responses came quickly, and each one felt like a tiny betrayal piling up into something I could no longer ignore. Blair's sneering dismissal of my stupid award, Mom's casual, "We're busy that night," as if I'd invited them to watch paint dry, Dad's thumbs up to Blair's cruelty like he was co-signing my irrelevance, Corey's laughing emoji that said more than words ever could. They weren't just declining an invitation. They were telling me again that nothing I did would ever be important enough to interrupt their plans, their preferences, their version of what deserved attention. And that's when something inside me shifted permanently, when I stopped hoping and started planning. I typed OK and set my phone down. And in that moment, I made a decision that would reshape everything. I wouldn't tell them what they were missing. I wouldn't explain the scope of the award, the broadcast reach, the significance of the work being recognized. I'd let them find out the hard way, in the most public, most shocking way possible, surrounded by strangers who understood my value better than my own family ever had. And as Saturday approached, I felt something I'd never felt before when it came to my family. Not hope, not anger, not even hurt. Just a cold, clear sense of karma brewing, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing they'd earned every second of what was coming. The Grand Marquis Hotel in Chicago was the kind of place that made you feel important just by walking through the doors. Marble floors that echoed with every step, chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls of light, and staff who treated every guest like visiting royalty. I checked in Friday night, one day before the ceremony, and spent the evening in my room rehearsing my acceptance speech and trying not to think about the empty seats that would represent my family. Selma had flown in to support me, along with 3 colleagues from the lab, and their presence filled some of the hollow space my family had left behind. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the absence, didn't imagine for just a moment what it would be like to see Mom's face in the audience. Proud for once. Saturday arrived with crisp autumn air and nerves that felt like electricity running through my veins. The ballroom was already being set up when I peeked in during the afternoon. A massive stage with my name on a placard, cameras positioned at strategic angles, lighting rigs that would make sure every moment was captured in high definition for the live broadcast. Production assistants rushed around with clipboards and headsets, and I overheard one of them mention that the stream was expected to reach viewers nationwide, with coverage picked up by major networks, and the Chicago affiliate simulcasted it on public displays. Everyone would see me accept this award, would hear about the work I'd done, would know my name and face. Everyone except the 4 people I'd spent my whole life trying to impress. The ceremony started at 7 sharp, just like the invitation had specified, and I sat in the front row watching other recipients accept their awards. A firefighter who'd saved 6 people from a collapsed building, a 911 dispatcher who'd talked a suicidal veteran down from a bridge, a paramedic who'd pioneered a new CPR technique. These were real heroes, people who'd literally held lives in their hands, and I was about to be honored alongside them for work that had started as just me, alone in a lab, trying to solve a problem nobody in my family even understood. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd finally found my people, my tribe, and they were complete strangers, while my actual family was across town screaming at a concert they'd chosen over me. When they called my name, the applause felt like thunder rolling through that massive room, and I walked across the stage with my head high, feeling the weight of every camera tracking my movement. The presenter, some federal official whose name I'd read in textbooks, described my system in terms that made it sound almost heroic. An innovation that has directly reduced emergency response times by an average of 18%, with projections suggesting thousands more lives saved as the system scales nationally. He handed me the crystal trophy, and I felt its cool weight settle into my hands like physical proof of my worth, like justice finally served after years of being treated as if I didn't matter. I gave my speech to that sea of faces I didn't know, thanking Selma and my team, talking about the importance of using technology to serve humanity's most vulnerable moments. And somewhere in the middle of it, I thought about my family standing in that concert venue completely oblivious to what was happening. I thought about Blair, probably taking selfies, Corey making jokes about the opening band, Mom and Dad nursing overpriced beers, none of them with even a flicker of curiosity about where I was or what I was doing. They'd cheated themselves out of this moment, out of seeing their daughter shine in a way that couldn't be diminished or dismissed. And the truth was, I didn't need them there anymore. The ceremony wrapped up around 9, and I stood in the reception area accepting congratulations from strangers who seemed genuinely impressed by my work, exchanging contact information with researchers and officials who wanted to collaborate, feeling seen in a way I'd never experienced before. My phone sat silently in my clutch purse, and I didn't check it once during those 2 hours of celebration because I knew my family wasn't thinking about me. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't discover until I finally looked at that screen around 11, was that they'd been thinking about nothing else for the past 3 hours, and their panic was about to become my vindication. But first, they had to see my face flash across those screens and realize exactly what they'd thrown away. I finally pulled my phone out of my purse around 11 p.m., back in my hotel room, still wearing my gown and riding the high of the evening's success. The screen lit up like a firework display. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, and notifications that kept pouring in even as I stared at them in disbelief. Every single one was from my family, and the progression of messages told a story that made my chest feel tight with something between satisfaction and sadness. It started around 7:40, right when my name had been called on stage, right when my face had apparently appeared on those massive screens at the concert venue where they'd chosen to be instead. Blair's first message was time-stamped 7:43 p.m. "Evelyn, WTF is this?" Followed immediately by, "Why is your face on the screens here?" And then a photo, a blurry shot of one of the venue's displays showing me mid-speech, my name captioned underneath with National Public Safety Innovation Award, Innovator of the Year. I could practically feel her panic through the screen. That shocking realization that her stupid award sister was apparently important enough to interrupt her precious concert experience. Mom's messages started around the same time. "Honey, people are asking if we're related to you." And, "What award is this? Why didn't you tell us it was this big?" As if I hadn't told them exactly when and where to find out. Dad's texts were shorter, but more frantic. "Call me now," appeared 6 times in a row, each one more demanding than the last. Like he suddenly had the right to immediate access to me after dismissing my invitation entirely. Corey, who'd laughed at my announcement just days before, sent a string of messages that ranged from confused to almost proud. "Yo sis, this is actually crazy. People here are taking pictures of the screen with your face on it. Some lady just asked for our autograph, I'm not even joking. The absurdity of it all would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic." They'd ignored me completely until strangers forced them to acknowledge my existence. But the messages that really got me, the ones that made my hands shake as I scrolled through them, were the ones that came after the ceremony ended. "Blair, I'm so proud of you. I always knew you'd do something amazing. Mom, We've been bragging about you all night. Everyone here is so impressed. Dad. My daughter, the national award winner. Call me so we can celebrate. Every single word felt like a lie, like they were trying to rewrite history in real time and pretend they'd been supportive all along. They weren't proud. They were humiliated that strangers had witnessed their indifference, that people had seen them choose a concert over their daughter's national recognition. The voicemails were even worse. I played one from Mom and immediately regretted it. Her voice was high-pitched and performative, talking about how overwhelming it was to see me on those screens, how people had been stopping them all night to congratulate them, how she couldn't believe her baby girl had accomplished something so incredible. The same woman who'd responded to my invitation with, "We're busy that night," was now spinning a narrative where she'd known all along, where she'd been my biggest cheerleader, where this was somehow a shared family victory. I sat there on the hotel bed, still in my gown, listening to her lies and feeling something harden inside my chest. What killed me wasn't just the hypocrisy. It was how quickly they'd pivoted from dismissal to ownership, from stupid awards to our daughter the innovator, from complete indifference to desperate attempts at connection. They didn't care about my achievement. They cared about how it reflected on them, about what strangers thought when they realized these people had blown off their daughter's moment of national recognition. This wasn't love or pride. This was damage control. This was saving face. This was the same family drama that had defined my entire childhood playing out in real time. And as I stared at that flood of messages, I realized I had a choice. Let them rewrite this story, or finally tell them the truth about what their betrayal had cost. I woke up Sunday morning to a new wave of messages that made my stomach turn. My family wasn't just trying to celebrate retroactively. They were actively attempting to insert themselves into my success story like they'd been there all along. Mom had sent a long text about how she wanted to do a joint interview with a local news station that had apparently reached out to her asking about raising such a brilliant daughter. She'd already outlined talking points, how she'd always encouraged my love of science, how she knew from the time I was little that I was destined for greatness, how proud the whole family was of my accomplishments. Every word was fiction, a carefully constructed narrative that erased years of neglect and indifference. Dad's messages were even more calculated. He'd apparently been contacted by his company's PR department, who wanted to feature me in their newsletter as an employee's daughter who'd made it big, and he was already planning the photo shoot. "We should get professional family photos done," he wrote, "something that shows the strong family values that helped shape your success." I read that line 3 times, each time feeling more disgusted. Strong family values? The same values that had taught me my achievements were background noise unless they served someone else's narrative. The same values that had made me feel invisible for 28 years, until suddenly my visibility became useful to them. Blair took a different approach. She'd already posted on Instagram a throwback photo of us as kids with a caption that made me want to scream. "Always knew my brilliant baby sister would change the world. So proud to have watched you grow into the amazing woman you are today. Sister goals, Psychiar, proud big sis, innovation." The comments were full of people congratulating her, asking her what it was like to have such a talented sibling, and she was eating it up like she'd earned any part of my success. She'd lied to her entire social media following, creating this image of a supportive older sister when just days ago she'd called my award stupid and chosen a concert over my ceremony. Corey's angle was more subtle but equally infuriating. He'd started telling people at his gym about his genius sister who just won a national award, and apparently someone there worked for a podcast that wanted to do an episode about family dynamics that produce high achievers. He forwarded me the email like it was some exciting opportunity, completely oblivious to the irony that our actual family dynamics had consisted of him laughing at my invitation with an emoji. They all wanted payback now. Not the kind where they faced consequences, but the kind where they got to cash in on my accomplishments without ever acknowledging their betrayal. What made it all worse was how coordinated it felt, like they'd gotten together and strategized about how to maximize their association with my success. Mom wanted interviews, Dad wanted photos, Blair wanted social media content, Corey wanted podcast features. They were building an entire ecosystem of publicity around an achievement they'd actively dismissed. They weren't proud of me. They were proud of what being related to me could do for their own images, their own social capital, their own 15 minutes of reflected glory. And the sickest part? Not one of them had actually apologized for missing the ceremony, or acknowledged that their response to my invitation had been cruel. I sat there in that hotel room, screenshots accumulating on my phone like evidence in a trial. And I realized this was my moment of truth. I could let them have this. Let them rewrite history and claim credit for supporting me. Let them profit emotionally and socially from work they'd never valued until strangers forced them to see it. Or I could do something I'd never done before in my entire life. I could set boundaries, enforce consequences, and refuse to let them steal the dignity I'd finally claimed for myself. The decision felt both terrifying and necessary, like stepping off a cliff while knowing you've got wings you've never used before. And the message I was about to send would either free me or blow up what was left of my relationship with my family forever. I spent 2 hours Sunday afternoon crafting a message to the family group chat, deleting and rewriting until every word felt exactly right. Firm but not cruel, honest but not petty, clear about boundaries without descending into the kind of drama they'd probably expect from me. I knew this message would either wake them up or confirm everything I'd always suspected about where I stood in their priorities. My hands were shaking when I finally hit send. I need to be clear about something. I will not be participating in any interviews, podcasts, or photo shoots that involve this family. I do not authorize any of you to speak to media about me or contact my colleagues. What happened this week hurt more than I can adequately express, and watching you try to capitalize on something you openly mocked feels like a betrayal I can't ignore. The response was immediate, and exactly what I'd expected. Defensiveness wrapped in denial with a bow of manufactured hurt feelings. Mom fired back first. "Evelyn, you're being dramatic. We've always been proud of you. We just had other commitments that night. It's not like we knew it was going to be this big of a deal." I stared at that message, feeling rage build in my chest because she was doing it again. Minimizing, rewriting, pretending that "we're busy that night" was somehow different from active rejection. I'd literally told them it was a national award being broadcast live, and she was acting like I'd undersold it, like their ignorance was somehow my fault for not being more explicit about my own importance. Dad's response was worse. "You need to calm down and stop being so sensitive. Family supports family, and if you can't handle us being proud of you now, that's your problem, not ours. We're not going to apologize for having lives and schedules that don't revolve around you." Reading those words felt like being slapped. He'd turned my pain into a character flaw, made my need for basic respect into some kind of selfish demand. This was the same man who'd moved heaven and earth to attend every single one of Blair's pageants, who'd never missed one of Corey's baseball games, who'd rearranged business trips to be at family events that mattered to everyone except me. But asking him to watch a live stream for 30 minutes, that was me expecting the world to revolve around me. Blair's message came through while I was still processing Dad's cruelty. "Wow, Evelyn. Way to make everything about you. I posted something nice about you and this is how you react. You've always been jealous that people pay attention to me, and now that you finally got some recognition, you're acting like you're better than all of us. Grow up." I couldn't believe what I was reading. She'd actually managed to twist my boundary setting into an attack on her, to frame my refusal to let her profit from my success as some kind of sibling rivalry. The same person who'd mocked my award as stupid was now accusing me of having a superiority complex for not letting her play the proud sister role. Corey tried a different tactic, going for guilt. "Come on, sis. We're family." "Yeah, we messed up, but you're really going to throw away your whole family over one mistake? That seems pretty extreme. Mom and Dad are really hurt, and Blair's been crying all afternoon. Is this really the hill you want to die on?" And there it was. The classic family manipulation, making me responsible for their emotional reactions to my boundaries, framing my self-worth as divisiveness. They'd hurt me, dismissed me, mocked me, and now I was the bad guy for not letting them pretend it never happened. The audacity of it all would have been impressive if it wasn't so predictable and soul-crushing. I took screenshots of every single message, their initial dismissal of my invitation, their panicked texts during the ceremony, their attempts to profit from my success, and now their defensive attacks on my character for daring to set limits. I saved them all in a folder labeled evidence, because some part of me knew this wasn't over, that they'd try to gaslight me later, that I'd need proof of what really happened when they inevitably tried to rewrite history again. Then I typed one final message. I'm muting this group for a while. When and if I'm ready to discuss this further, I'll reach out. Until then, please respect my boundary and do not contact my workplace or colleagues. I hit send, silenced the chat, and felt something shift. Justice, maybe. Or just the beginning of reclaiming the peace they'd stolen from me my entire life. I kept that family group chat muted for exactly 1 year, and in that silence, I discovered what my life could feel like without the constant weight of their judgment and indifference pressing down on me. The first few weeks were hard. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to share something exciting, only to remember that the people who should care the most had proven they cared the least. But slowly, that impulse faded, replaced by a sense of freedom I'd never experienced before. I started building relationships with colleagues who celebrated my wins without needing a stadium audience to validate them. Friends who showed up consistently instead of performatively. Mentors like Selma who valued my contributions because they actually understood what I was contributing. My work continued to expand in ways I'd never imagined. The emergency response system scaled to 12 states, then 20, then became a federal standard that touched every major city in the country. I gave talks at conferences, consulted with international agencies, watched my creations save lives in real time, through data I could track and measure. And through it all, my family remained on mute, a ghost of a relationship that existed in name only. They tried individual texts occasionally, Mom sending holiday messages that I'd open and archive without responding, Dad forwarding articles about my work with comments like, "Saw this, very cool," Blair's birthday texts that felt obligatory rather than genuine. I let them all sit in that void they'd created. Let them wonder if I'd ever come back. Around month 8, Blair violated the one boundary I'd been crystal clear about. She posted a throwback Thursday photo on Instagram of us at my college graduation, captioned with some nonsense about always supporting my brilliant sister through every milestone. The post got thousands of likes, and several people tagged me asking about our close bond and whether I'd do a joint interview about successful siblings. I saw it because a colleague sent it to me, asking if it was okay that my sister was using my achievement for engagement. That's when I realized the muting hadn't been enough. I needed walls, locked doors, legal boundaries if necessary. I sent Blair a direct message that was colder than anything I'd ever written. Take down the post about my graduation within 24 hours, or I will publicly comment with screenshots of you calling my national awards stupid and choosing a concert over my ceremony. Additionally, if you continue to profit from association with my work on social media, I will have my attorney send a formal notice. This is not a negotiation. She called me 15 times in the next hour. I didn't answer a single one. The post was deleted within 3 hours, and she sent a long, rambling apology that somehow still managed to center her feelings and paint me as unreasonable. I read it once and blocked her number entirely. Mom and Dad tried to intervene after that, suddenly concerned about family unity and demanding I stop punishing Blair for one mistake. I broke my silence just long enough to send them a message that laid everything out. For 28 years, you made me feel like my accomplishments didn't matter unless they served someone else. You taught me that Blair's beauty was worth celebrating, Corey's charm was worth protecting, and my intelligence was just expected labor. When I finally achieved something undeniable, you chose a concert. You don't get to demand access now that strangers have shown you my value. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting my peace from people who've proven they'll only acknowledge me when it benefits them. I didn't wait for a response before turning off all notifications from their numbers. The thing about cutting off toxic family isn't that it makes everything instantly better. It's that it stops making everything constantly worse. I still have moments where I see a family in a restaurant laughing together and feel that old ache for what I never had. I still catch myself wondering if I'm being too harsh, if I should give them another chance, if blood really is supposed to be thicker than the dignity they stole from me. But then I remember how it felt to stand on that stage, recognized for saving lives, while my family screamed at a concert they'd chosen over me. I remember Blair's sneering, stupid awards, Mom's casual dismissal, Dad's indifference, Corey's mocking emoji. And I remember the revenge that came not from destroying them, but from simply refusing to let them destroy me anymore. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Sometimes the real justice is in walking away and building a better life on solid ground, surrounded by people who valued you before the world told them they should. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever been in a situation where your family made you feel invisible? Where your achievements were treated like they didn't matter until suddenly they became useful to someone else's image? Have you ever set a boundary with people you love and been called dramatic, selfish, or ungrateful for simply protecting your peace? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. I want to hear about the moment you realize that loyalty isn't automatic just because someone shares your blood, or the time you finally chose yourself over people who expected you to stay small for their comfort. And here's the real question that keeps me up at night. How do you know when it's time to walk away from toxic family versus when it's worth trying to repair the relationship? Where's that line for you between giving people another chance and protecting yourself from people who've proven they'll only hurt you again? Because I'll be honest, some days I still wonder if I made the right call, if I'm too harsh, if I should have forgiven faster. But then I remember that stage, that award, those empty seats, and I know in my bones that some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. What do you think? Am I wrong? Should family get unlimited chances regardless of how they treat you? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my situation. Would you have confronted them differently, cut them off sooner, or given them another opportunity to prove they'd changed? Your perspective matters to me, because these stories aren't just about revenge or justice. They're about all of us figuring out how to protect our dignity while navigating the complicated mess of families, relationships. And if this story resonated with you, if you felt that same ache of being undervalued by the people who should cherish you most, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. I share stories like this regularly. Raw, honest explorations of family betrayal, boundary setting, and the hard-won journey to reclaiming your self-worth. Let's keep this conversation going, because you deserve to be seen, valued, and celebrated. And sometimes that means learning when to walk away from people who refuse to see you at all.